Good afternoon. 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up from the Republican National Committee, we will be joined by Madison Gesiotto Gilbert. She'll join us. I think she's in Milwaukee as we speak about this debate tomorrow night. All of the Republicans who will be taking the stage and how they got there. Joe Concha will join us today at 4:30. Always love chatting with Joe. We'll talk about Joe Biden's visit to Hawaii, only compounding the disaster there. And Winsome Sears, the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, is here at 5 o'clock. I have so many questions for her. She's got a new book out as well. How sweet it is defending the American dream. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I do want to talk about Biden's Hawaii visit, and we will do that with Joe, but I'll just say in summary, it was an embarrassment to the American people that the President of the United States can't even stay awake through a briefing on the events that have taken place in Hawaii with upwards of thousands of people missing, hundreds of people dead, a community left in ruins, the government shutting down any access to the community for the press. And that includes local press. You've got local reporters who run newspapers in Maui who can't even get into Lahaina, who are being blockaded from going in. I see a broadcast network saying, well, we were told we weren't allowed to go down certain roads because there were bodies. I'm sorry. You're the media. Go in. You've got a First Amendment right to do it. You can make an editorial judgment call about what images you show on your programming, but go in. Go in. The government trying to just create a complete barricade to any information about what's going on in Lahaina. And that's because the disaster is unprecedented. Unprecedented, certainly this century. A fire like this just destroying so many homes, killing so many people, and a government that has just been completely asleep at the switch. Completely. From not turning the sirens on to alert the people of the disaster that was looming around them, to failing to authorize water to the hydrants. How do the hydrants dry up? You have opportunities. First of all, you're in the ocean. The whole thing is crazy. But there's a stream right nearby, and they were asking for permission. There was a 5-hour delay before they were finally given the green light to run some of that water to Lahaina. And by that point, the hydrants had dried up. The fire wrecking that town. And then Biden goes there yesterday. He had to be browbeaten to go to a U.S. state with a disaster this immense because it interrupted his freaking vacations. 2 vacations, back-to-back, one in Delaware, one in Lake Tahoe. He's staying at Tom Steyer's $18 million home on the lake in Tahoe. And he begrudgingly gets his old butt on a plane and goes to Hawaii. And he can barely stay awake. It's a 6-hour time difference. This is not a huge thing. A president of the United States should be able to do this. He's like leaning on the lectern to support his weight as he steps away from it. He's not sure where to go. They're directing him. The governor of Hawaii is pointing at a water bottle. Here, have some water. Do you want to sip before you go, Mr. President? Oh. He walks away. And then he makes jokes to the people, the jokes that they're not bringing any levity to anything. It's just, it doesn't even make sense. And then he lies about his own experience with fire. He says his home almost burned down, and his wife almost died, and his cat almost died, and his Corvette almost burned to a crisp. The Associated Press reported that it was a 20-minute fire contained in the kitchen. No such dramatic damage. One fire department responded to it, took care of things. He lies. He's just a liar. His whole career is not just during the senile years. His whole career. And here he is again on display. Not the consoler-in-chief. Not at all. So we'll talk about that with Joe Concha coming up. But I want to focus for a moment on something that's even more important as this awful person is in the Oval Office. I said yesterday, and I'll keep saying, and we've said it in 6 million different ways, but I just want to reiterate, they, meaning the ruling class, they hate voters having choices. They hate the role that you and I play in selecting who's in power and what policies they implement. They despise our, quote, democracy, our democratic system, our republic. They despise that. When you see all of these new indictments come down on Trump, which, of course, are only making him more popular in the Republican primary, you've got to be an idiot not to recognize the timing of all of this. We are now in late 2023. We're tailing into the end of the summer here. We're in late 2023. And they just decided this year, of all years, that all of these indictments were going to drop. All of them? All of them. Indictments that have to do with the events that occurred in what year? 2020. The year 2020. So now, over 3 years later, all of these indictments arrive. Alvin Bragg, the New York District Attorney, saying that Donald Trump is guilty of federal criminal violations. He's not a federal prosecutor. What is he doing? It's insane. It's been insane. Jack Smith, the special counsel, this lunatic who's got all of these Biden donors on his team. Again, what do you think of that? 7 Democrat donors. Did you know that? 7 Democrat donors are on, well, excuse me, that's on David Weiss's prosecution team. Jack Smith has his own Democrat donors on his team. What do you know? And so he drops what? He drops a bunch of indictments against Trump. He has the paperwork indictment for Mar-a-Lago. The paperwork dispute between Joe Biden and Donald Trump has turned into criminal charges, thanks to Jack Smith. Only now, at this late stage, involving paperwork that was from the Trump presidency. And then the January 6th indictments. That is for leading an insurrection. That's Jack Smith's framing of all of this. Trying to criminalize Donald Trump's speech around electoral issues, which, as a candidate for public office, he is obviously allowed to make. Even not being a candidate entitles you to say all sorts of things, whatever you like about the state of American politics. Donald Trump objected to the nature of the last election, the way it was conducted. And he said, there's some funny business going on here. I'm contesting the way that these counts were executed in all of these states. And he did it. How did he do it? He put it before courts, didn't he? He went to courts. They filed case after case after case and court after court after court without much success. But he used the legal process to register those objections. He used his First Amendment right to speech, to petition. That's what he did. And he encouraged others to do the same thing on January 6th of all days. He says, I want you to make your voices patriotically and peacefully heard at the Capitol. Insurrection. That's what Jack Smith holds. He also left office on Inauguration Day. He left. He didn't hold on to the Resolute desk. They didn't have to grab him by the ankles and drag him away. He left office. He went down to Florida. And then there's Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney, who last week dropped a range of charges once again on Donald Trump and his associates. This is 2023. We are in the presidential election right now. And what were the charges for? They were for the 2020 election. They were for the events of the 2020 election. And what specifically? Donald Trump objecting to how the election was conducted in Georgia and maintaining his belief that he won. He thought he won. He thought he had the votes. If they were to actually do a genuine audit, they would discover that Donald Trump had won the election. Donald Trump said as much in his conversation with the Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensberger. He didn't say, I need you to manufacture votes. He didn't say create votes. He used the word find votes. Find them. A man convinced that he had won the election is asking the Secretary of State of Georgia to please find those votes that I'm confident exist. Here's Trump back then.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Do you hear that? Do you hear the certainty in his voice? He did not say, create these things. He did not. Am I wrong about this? I don't care. I don't care what your views are on Trump. You hear that audio. It is crystal clear what he's saying. Allan Dershowitz addressed this yesterday with Larry Kudlow. Here's what he had to say.
Trump said, find, not concoct, not manufacture, not make up. Find. If I were a defense lawyer in this case, I would start with that phone call. It's the most exculpatory piece of evidence. The word find has a dictionary meaning.
And to his point, that it's the most exculpatory piece of evidence. Well, that's excellent, because what that is taking the sword out of the hands of the left, because they think that's the most damning piece of evidence. They think that that's going to be the thing that finally gives them the happiness that they haven't been able to find anywhere else in their life. They think that by locking Donald Trump up, they will finally find the joy that has eluded them. Of course, that won't happen. This week in Georgia, Donald Trump is set to turn himself in Thursday. He's going to be booked on Thursday in the Fani Willis case. Now, that's going to have the multiple effects at the same time. One is going to upend whatever the post-Republican debate news cycle is. Well, that's going to basically be gone. That'll be gone on Thursday, because it's once again, certainly by Trump's desire, he doesn't want it this way, but Trump's desire, it'll be the Trump show. It'll also be, by the media's desire, it'll be the Trump show. And the reality is, we're watching this open-air political persecution, the arrest of political opponents, play out in front of us. So, of course, we should actually be focused on it. But how many times have we used the phrase, we talked about the phrase, the rigging of an American election. You're witnessing it play out in front of you. They are rigging this thing. Any number of ways. In the Trump case, they're doing it through lawfare. They're arresting him, they're indicting him, they're mugshotting him. That's going to take place Thursday. Now they'll get their mugshot. Again, it won't bring them the joy that they expect from it. I heard our buddy Dan Bongino and on his program saying Trump shouldn't even pay bond. Trump should just go to jail. He thinks that, okay, good. You want to do it? You want to do it? Give him the Nelson Mandela treatment. Give him the Martin Luther King treatment. Put him in jail. Imprison him. Make him a political prisoner. What is that going to do to his status? Interesting theory. But what the left is doing here through these prosecutions that they timed for this year, we heard MSNBC, Chris Hayes recently say, why did Jack Smith wait so long? He should have done this a while ago. Because it is not about a principle. It's about a goal. It's about upending the 2024 election. Here's what they think in the minds of the left right now. They have seen, they thought they had a sure thing with Hillary Clinton. They thought they had a sure thing with every Trump scandal they put forward in the past. And they have learned the lesson that Trump defies gravity. The more you attack him, the more you elevate him with his base. That has been true. And it is true today. And again, rightfully so. This isn't a bad impulse. This is actually the American people waking up to the destruction of the system and how it targets people for destruction. But the thinking, clearly, is indict. Hopefully this will result in him winning the primary, and then he loses the general because we've dirtied him up enough. We've scared off the so-called independent voters. We're going to have people who were lifelong Republican voters nervous enough that some percentage of them will stay home because they can't justify to their neighbors that they voted for Donald Trump. On and on, the theory here. And their belief is, look, we got Joe Biden. We got a mannequin through in 2020. We can do it again in 2024, and we'll dirty him up even more than we dirtied him up in the first place. So that's one part of the rigging that we are witnessing. But it's not the only part. This is just like 2020. It's a multifaceted effort. They're coming from every angle. More of those angles in just a moment, because I do have some other things that I'm just seeing now. In just the last 24 hours, things are moving quickly. You got to keep your head on a swivel. How do you rig an election? How do you stop the voters from being able to exercise their will in the ballot box? Well, a bunch of ways. One is what is already taking shape here by going after Trump for, quote, Insurrection Act violations. There are a number of left-wing legal scholars, anti-Trump legal scholars, who are all coming out and have been saying that Donald Trump would be invalidated as a candidate for president of the United States. Voters wouldn't have a choice anymore. They would take care of that for you. You wouldn't see the words Donald Trump appear on your ballot. Pick somebody else. So they want to deprive voters of the ability to even choose. Of course, this is a mangled legal theory that serious legal minds don't take seriously at all. But enough of these quacks are out there, and they're saying stuff like this because they're hoping that they can remove Trump from the ballot entirely. Also, in just the last 48 hours, we get two ruling class headlines, one from the New York Times, one from the Atlantic, that are a little too on the nose. One, elections are bad for democracy, is a real New York Times column that's just run. Talking about how it's too messy. We shouldn't have to do this anymore. In fact, we should randomly choose people to hold these positions. No more voting for people. That's the New York Times position here. Meanwhile, the Atlantic has a headline up today: Americans vote too much. This is. Can you imagine if conservative outlets were publishing stuff like this? The Atlantic: Americans vote too much. There's just too many decisions, they say, about who's in charge and what referendums. We should have fewer elections. We shouldn't have so much of a responsibility and a role for American citizens. That's just making things worse, they say. I'm sorry, who's the fascist in this conversation? The person who despises our democratic systems, who would rather have the ruling elite make decisions about the way the rest of us live. Well, that's the left. It's always been the left, and it always will be the left. And they just keep doing it. They just keep doing it. And one last thing. This is a big one. Have you noticed all the chatter about COVID coming back lately? COVID cases are on the rise. Might be time to bring back some of those COVID protocols. Well, if you're going to repeat the 2020 election, you're going to have to repeat elements of the 2020 election. How did you get to the point where you could successfully lock Joe Biden in a basement and then make people vote outside of the ballot box? Don't let it happen. Well, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up today, Joe Concha will join us at 4:30. We'll talk about Biden's horrific visit to Hawaii yesterday, to Maui. And then Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears from the Commonwealth of Virginia joins us at 5 o'clock. She's out with a new book, and we've got a lot to chat with her about as regards the insurrection in the school systems in Virginia. And we can chat with you, as always, at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We'll take some calls here in a couple minutes. I want to move first, though, to this first Republican debate that's going to take place tomorrow in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Sans the frontrunner, Donald Trump, has decided at kind of a late stage, as is Trump's way, of he's not going to the debate. Instead, he's going to be releasing some counter-programming, an interview with Tucker Carlson, set to come out tomorrow night, apparently as the debate is going, which is interesting for all sorts of reasons. But before we get to Trump, let's just talk about the candidates that are going to be on that stage, what to expect from the debate. We'll do that now with Madison Gesiotto Gilbert. She is the national spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee. Madison, good to have you with us.
So good to be with you, Vince.
How are things shaping up there? I understand you are in Milwaukee. How are things looking right now?
I'm in Milwaukee. I'm on the ground. We are super excited. I think tomorrow is going to be a great debate. It's going to be a great night. The energy is very real here on the ground for people that are going to be attending the debate. And I've been talking to people all across the country over the past couple of days that are really excited to tune in and hear what these candidates have to say.
And everyone who's going to be appearing on that debate stage, they all met some minimum threshold for being there, right? Whether it's the number of donors that they have, how well they're polling. And also, they all had to make a promise that they will support the eventual Republican nominee. Is that true?
That's correct. It's been a few months now since we originally put out all of our debate criteria, and we were very clear on what that would include obviously polling being one of those things. Candidates had to poll at least 1% in 3 national polls, or 1% in 2 national polls and 1% in an early state poll from 2 separate carve-out states. For fundraising, they had to have a minimum of 40,000 unique donors, at least 200 in each state or territory. And then, of course, as has been the hot debate, the hot topic, people had to sign that candidate pledge. And obviously all 8 of our candidates that'll be on stage tomorrow did sign that pledge, saying that they agreed to support the eventual nominee next year.
Do you believe them, Madison? Because at least in the case of 2 candidates I can think of, Chris Christie has previously signaled that he's not going to support Trump. So did he lie when he signed that form?
I think that he didn't really see the full language of what our pledge included before he ultimately made the decision to sign it. We expect that each one of our candidates is genuine. We do look at the intent of what they're saying, and when they sign the pledge, that does come into play. And we felt after analyzing this that each one of those 8 did sign the pledge after seeing the full language with the intent to follow everything that it says. And so whether it be obviously supporting the eventual nominee or agreeing to not participate in non-sanctioned debates outside of our RNC debates, obviously we have a data sharing agreement in there, and they needed to present it to us within 48 hours.
What was Madison? I may have missed it because I haven't seen the language. What other language may have convinced Chris Christie to sign on to this then?
I'm not privy to exactly why Chris Christie did or didn't sign, but ultimately at the end of the day, he did make the decision to sign, and I think recognize the importance of the unity that we're going to need. At the end of the day, none of this matters if we don't beat Joe Biden.
Sure.
People in this country have been suffering for 2.5 years. As far as I'm concerned, very unnecessarily. Biden himself, even after taking office, made a lot of promises that he simply didn't keep. People in my home state of Ohio and all across this country have felt the negative impact of that, and they're sick of it. And so I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to, and I think many people are looking forward to tomorrow, is not just for Republican primary voters to hear the messages from our candidates and to hear this Republican vision that stands in contrast to what Joe Biden and the Democrats have to offer, but for independents and Democrats that won't necessarily be voting in those Republican primaries, but for that seed to be planted, for them to hear this vision and to ultimately realize that, listen, you do have an alternative. Things don't have to be this way, and here's how it could be. Here's the prosperous American future that you could have. And so I think that could ultimately help us swing a lot of independents that simply didn't swing our way in 2022, unfortunately.
Right. And after what appears to be, in some cases, an aggressive primary process. Obviously, Trump is way out ahead, but you've got some bad blood directed at him from some of the candidates on that stage. What you need to beat Biden is some unity behind that nominee, whoever that ends up being. And one last question on people who appear on that stage and not exactly committing to Trump should he win this thing. Asa Hutchinson said this on MSNBC yesterday.
And the pledge is a condition of being at the debate that you'll support the eventual nominee. I'm just trying to find the consistency with your stated positions. I admire some of them, but some of them don't add up.
Well, you got to think a little bit lawyerly here that I signed it saying I'm going to support the nominee of the party. I do not believe that Donald Trump will be the nominee of the party, so I can feel comfortable in signing that pledge.
So is he okay to be on that debate stage then, if that's his position? Because it looks like at this moment, Trump's kind of on his road to being the nominee.
Listen, if Donald Trump is the nominee and he comes out victorious at the RNC, we're going to make sure he's equipped with every tool, just like any other candidate, to win this election. And we expect that the other 8+ candidates that ran for that primary will do the same and making sure that we get across that finish line. I think when you look at the greater good of a Republican vision, if you look at the greater good of our country and of our party, we have to stick together. The Democrats, time and time again, election after election, you've seen this, Vince. We've talked about this. They come together, they fight behind closed doors, but they do what it takes to get across the finish line. And I think as Republicans in 2024, we need to do a better job of that than ever before if we want to win, not just the presidential, but many of our down ballot races as well.
Now, do you think Donald Trump made a mistake? I know you've, of course, been a Trump supporter for a long time. Do you think that Donald Trump made a mistake by not participating in this debate?
I would have loved to see the president there. I wish he would have changed his mind, and I hope in future debates he will participate. Because, again, I think it's a huge opportunity for every one of our candidates to get out there and speak to independents and Democrats that we're going to need to help us get across the finish line next November. On top of that, you look at that mainstream media narrative that we've been combating for years, not just Trump himself, but Republicans as a whole. I mean, we don't get the fair coverage in the same way that the Democrats do. We don't get the puff pieces written about us. And so we're very much forced to combat that every opportunity that we get. And I think this debate's going to be a great opportunity to talk about the facts of what we have to offer and present solutions, not just sell a dream, but present solutions that are based in reality, things that we can actually accomplish, things that our candidates can actually do for the American people, that are fact-based solutions. And so I think that's going to be huge when you talk about connecting with some of these voters that are spending more money, that have seen the prices of everything in their lives go up, that families simply can't afford the higher taxes they've paid under Biden, to see them be able to listen to the Republican vision and recognize that they do have an option for something different. I think that's going to be huge. And I think this debate and other debates, as well as other opportunities that we'll have as a Republican Party to share that through every one of our Republican candidates, is an important part of us winning next November.
Madison Gesiotto Gilbert, we're seeing, again, RNC spokeswoman today joining us. We're seeing some headlines that Fox News is barring Donald Trump's surrogates from being in the post-debate spin room tomorrow night. My understanding is that the RNC kind of controls who gets to go into the debate room, and Trump surrogates will be there. But Fox apparently controls the spin room after. What do you make of that decision by the network to blockade these surrogates for Trump?
Yeah, so Fox does make that decision. We do not have any control over who is in or out of the spin room. They made the decision. We have seen it. When it comes to what is our responsibility, what are we doing? Well, we're here to put on fair and honest debate for our candidates and to present a fair and honest primary process to the Republican voters. So that's what we're committed to. That's what we're doing. And unfortunately, we don't have any control over the spin room or who goes in or out.
So this is, of course, the first of these Republican primary debates. What should we expect going forward beyond Wednesday in terms of what do these debates look like? Who's actually going to be moderating them? Fox seems like obviously one of the networks that would be in the game here. Who else might we see a debate with?
So we have our Fox Business debate coming up next month in September. That's been announced. And we have some different criteria that's been released on that. So for people to qualify for that next debate, they're going to have to poll at least 3% in 2 national polls, or 3% in 1 national poll and 3% in 1 early state poll from 2 separate carve-out states. Again, those being Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina are early carve-out states. For fundraising, they're going to need to step it up as well. 50,000 unique donors. Again, 200 of those donors coming from each state or territory. And then, of course, the pledge remains that third requirement.
Okay. And I imagine that the outreach to Trump continues at the RNC to get him to be a part of those future debates.
Of course, we're in contact with the president, and we hope that he will be a part of the future debates, and I certainly encourage him to do so. Yeah, and if 3% is the cutoff, that you're starting to remove a bunch of people at that point. I mean, right now I am seeing the top 2, other than Trump, are Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, both polling at around 10% in a poll just out in the last 48 hours or so. And beyond that, you're starting to get a lot of also-rans. So a lot of, a lot might be decided tomorrow night on that debate stage, Madison. Yeah, and I think that's why everybody that's listening needs to make sure they tune in. I think it's going to be a very exciting night. Anything can happen, and we've seen this in election cycles past, where people, rise to the top that you never expect. And so anybody's message could resonate with the American people tomorrow. We're looking forward to all of those messages being presented. And again, every one of those messages is going to be way better than what we have in the White House right now, which is why we're so excited for the time as of now as a Republican Party for what we have to offer. We think every one of our candidates could do 10 times better job than what Joe Biden's been doing. He's been a complete and total failure and an unempathetic president.
Yes.
And we're looking forward to some change in 2024.
Which is why I would like to hear Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson say, in a heartbeat, I would support Trump over Joe Biden. It's the most obvious thing ever. Madison Gesiotto Gilbert from the RNC, thank you so much for your time today.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me, Vince.
Yeah, but you're not going to hear them say that because they're looking to actively undermine him. The idea that Asa Hutchinson could go on MSNBC as he did yesterday, MSNBC, and speak to Nicole Wallace, Democrat extraordinaire, and tell her, I know she worked in the Bush administration. It's so ridiculous, and to sit there and be like, yeah, I pledge to support the nominee because I'm confident that Donald Trump's not going to be the nominee, despite all of the math. What are you talking about? Do you or do you not pledge to support the nominee? Nobody wants this crap, this double talk. Asa Hutchinson never had a chance in the first place, but still, he's appearing on that debate stage, and yet he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He lied on a pledge. Chris Christie is not going to support Trump. Chris Christie is going to be an active antagonist for Donald Trump if and when he wins the nomination. His job is to try and kamikaze Trump. He wants to run into him, just smash him. He doesn't care that he's taking down whatever candidacy he appears to be running. Chris Christie's candidacy is not about becoming president. Although I'm confident Chris Christie would love to be president of the United States. But that is not the strategy here. If it was, he would be appealing to Trump voters. If Chris Christie wanted to win a Republican nomination, he would appeal to the people who voted for Donald Trump twice in record numbers. Donald Trump with more votes for an incumbent president than any president in American history on his reelect. Chris Christie's MO is not to become president this cycle. It's to, take down Trump. So tomorrow night, you get that debate as these guys take the stage. The way that it's set up, Ron and Ram are going to be in the middle of the stage. That is, Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to be standing next to one another. And actually, that's kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize, I realize it now by virtue of the poll numbers, but some time ago, if you had told me that Vivek Ramaswamy was going to be square at the middle of the debate stage based on polling numbers, I would have been like, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, you'll see it tomorrow night. Governor Ron DeSantis and biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy are set to take center stage at Wednesday night's first Republican presidential nomination debate, according to the lineup released Tuesday by the Republican National Committee. Standing alongside DeSantis and Ramaswamy at the debate, this is Fox reporting, will be former Vice President Mike Pence and former ambassador and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina will be next in the 5 and 6 positions. And then on the flanks, on the wings, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. You know what? My favorite thing about the people who end up at the bottom of the polls and on the edge of the stage is they always complain about how little time they have to speak. Every single time, to a T. It's like, I'm entitled. They had a lot of time to speak. Well, nobody wants to hear from you. Nobody supports you. I don't even know how you got. Did you stay at a Holiday Inn Express? How did you get up on this stage tonight? So look forward to Doug Burgum complaining about his speaking time. How come Vivek has to speak so much? He's polling at 10%, Doug. Meanwhile, Trump, he skips it. We'll see if that was a wise decision because what's going to happen is, of course, these guys are going to stand on stage. They're going to battle it out with one another. Trump is going to be hit without being able to return fire. Unless, I don't know, maybe somebody represents Trump's position on that stage. Maybe somebody takes up for him on some of these questions. But Trump's going to be his own best defender, right? He's not going to be able to do that. We'll see if any of those candidates can consolidate some support and grow. But, boy, they have a long way to go. A long way to go if they think they're going to catch up with Trump. Trump's way out ahead. Trump has a 46% margin. 46% margin on both Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy. And DeSantis is going down, and Ramaswamy is going up. That's the current pacing. Neither of them within spitting distance of Donald Trump. It'll all stay interesting, I promise that. All right, let's go to the phones. 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Adrian calling in from Albuquerque on line 4. Adrian, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hello, Vince.
Hey, sir.
Vince, I just wanted to call in, and as I was mentioning to the call screener, a lot of the pundits, they've been making comments about, they're not going to watch the debate and such. I do believe it's important. I am a Trump supporter. He's my top choice. But with all these shenanigans going on, obviously I'm not able to predict the future. Who knows what will happen? But if President Trump will not be able to actually be on the ballot, I think we all need to have a second choice. The candidate I really like after Trump is Vivek Ramaswamy. He's always impressed me. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important just for everyone to have a look, see the candidates, and have a backup.
Yeah, they're all vying for your vote. They would like to be a part of leading this country, whether it's in this election cycle or if we're so blessed in a future election cycle. It is worth kicking the tires on these guys. I completely agree with you. I'll be watching both Trump's interview with Tucker Carlson and the debate this week because, well, that's my job. And also, it's important. It's important. My hope with this Republican primary process, even with Trump's massive lead, is that good people can stand on that debate stage together and improve one another for the future of this country. That's what it's all about. That is what it's all about. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Joe Concha. We're going to chat more with you. We got to get into Biden's visit to Hawaii, a total disaster this week.